Jessica had always been the girl who fixed everything. When her little brother scraped his knee, she was there with bandages. When her mom cried after Dad left, she made tea and sat quietly beside her. Even in college, friends came to her with their problems, knowing she would listen and somehow make things better. But 3 years ago, everything changed. Her marriage fell apart like a house of cards in the wind. One day she thought she had everything figured out, and the next day she was signing papers and packing boxes. The worst part wasn't the fighting or even the loneliness. It was how stupid she felt. How could she have been so wrong about someone she thought she knew inside and out? After that, Jessica decided she was done being the soft one, done being the person everyone could hurt. She looked at herself in the mirror one morning and made a promise. No more tears. No more trusting too easily. No more letting people see the real her. She threw herself into work like a woman running from a fire. Jessica worked at a big law firm downtown, the kind with glass walls and marble floors that made every footstep echo. She was good at her job, really good. She could argue a case, negotiate deals, and make grown men in expensive suits nervous with just a look. Her colleagues started calling her the Ice Queen, though never to her face. They respected her work but kept their distance. In meetings, she sat with perfect posture, her voice steady and cold as winter morning. She wore dark suits that looked like armor, her hair pulled back so tight it made her face look sharper than it really was. Every morning, Jessica would stand in front of her bathroom mirror and put on her game face. First, the makeup that made her look flawless and untouchable. Then the clothes that said she meant business. Finally, the expression that warned everyone to keep their distance. It was like putting on invisible armor, piece by piece. At work, she ate lunch alone, always with a legal document in front of her. When co-workers invited her for drinks, she politely declined. When someone tried to make small talk by the coffee machine, she gave short answers and walked away. She had built walls so high around herself that sometimes she felt like she was living in a tower, looking down at the world through a tiny window. The strange thing was, it worked. Nobody hurt her anymore because nobody could get close enough to try. She won case after case, got promotion after promotion, and earned more money than she had ever dreamed of. From the outside, her life looked perfect. Big apartment, expensive car, designer clothes. She should have been happy. But late at night, when she finally got home to her empty apartment, the silence was so loud it made her ears ring. She would sit on her fancy couch, eating takeout from the container, watching TV shows about other people's lives. Sometimes she caught herself talking to the characters on screen just to hear a friendly voice in the room. Jessica had forgotten what it felt like to laugh until her stomach hurt. She couldn't remember the last time someone hugged her or asked how she was really doing. The armor that protected her during the day became a prison at night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling like she was suffocating under the weight of all the walls she had built. Her old friends had stopped calling months ago. They said she had changed, become cold and distant. They weren't wrong. The warm, caring girl who used to bake cookies for sick friends and remember everyone's birthday had disappeared somewhere along the way. In her place was this polished, professional woman who looked successful but felt empty inside. Sometimes Jessica wondered who she really was underneath all the defenses. Was the caring girl still in there somewhere? Or had she killed her off completely? She had become so good at being strong and independent that she had forgotten how to be human. The worst part was, she wasn't even sure she remembered how to take the armor off anymore. She had built her walls so carefully, so permanently, that they felt like part of her now. Every brick had been placed with purpose, every defense mechanism, learned through pain. But what started as protection had become a cage, and Jessica was both the prisoner and the guard. The woman in the mirror looked successful and put together, but behind her eyes was someone screaming silently for help. Someone who desperately wanted to breathe freely again, but had forgotten how. Someone who was tired of fighting battles that never seemed to end, tired of being strong when all she wanted was to be real. Jessica had won the war against vulnerability, but in doing so she had lost herself. And deep down, in the quiet moments between cases and meetings, she was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, she wanted to find her way back to the girl who used to believe in happy endings. Jessica hadn't wanted to go to the wedding at all. Her college roommate, Lisa, had been begging her for months, sending invitation after invitation, calling every week to make sure she would be there. Lisa was one of the few people who still tried to stay in touch, even though Jessica made it difficult. "Please come," Lisa had said during their last phone call. "I know you're busy with work, but this is important to me. You were there for me through everything in college. I want you there for the happiest day of my life, too." So Jessica found herself standing in front of her closet on a Saturday morning, staring at dresses she hadn't worn in years. Everything looked too soft, too feminine, too much like the old her. Finally, she settled on a navy blue dress that was elegant, but not too flashy. Professional enough to feel safe in, but appropriate for a celebration. The wedding was at a small church outside the city, the kind of place with wooden pews and stained glass windows that painted rainbows on the floor. Jessica arrived exactly, on time, slipped into a back row, and planned to leave right after the ceremony. She had perfected the art of showing up just enough to fulfill social obligations without actually having to socialize, but Lisa spotted her immediately and rushed over before the ceremony started, her wedding dress rustling like autumn leaves. "You came! I was so worried you'd change your mind at the last minute." She hugged Jessica tightly, and for just a moment Jessica felt a crack in her armor. This was her friend, someone who had seen her cry over bad test grades and eat ice cream straight from the container during breakups. "You look beautiful," Jessica said, and meant it. Lisa was glowing with happiness, the kind of joy that Jessica remembered feeling once upon a time, but couldn't quite recall anymore. The ceremony was simple and sweet. Jessica watched as Lisa and her boyfriend Tom promised to love each other through good times and bad. The words made something twist uncomfortably in Jessica's chest. She had made those same promises once, believed in them completely. Now they sounded like fairy tales told to children who didn't know any better. After the ceremony, everyone moved to the reception hall next door. Jessica planned to make her escape, but Lisa caught her arm. "You're not leaving yet, are you? The party's just getting started. Besides, I want you to meet some people." Before Jessica could protest, she found herself being led to a table near the dance floor. The reception was exactly what she expected. People laughing too loudly, children running around with cake on their faces, couples dancing to songs that made them remember when they first fell in love. Jessica sat at her assigned table, making polite conversation with Lisa's relatives while checking her phone every few minutes. She had brought work with her just in case she got bored. Legal documents were so much easier to deal with than small talk about the weather and how lovely the flowers looked. The other people at her table were nice enough, but Jessica kept her responses short and professional. Yes, she was a lawyer. Yes, she enjoyed her work. No, she wasn't seeing anyone. The usual questions that made her feel like she was being interviewed for a job she didn't want. As the evening wore on, Jessica found herself sitting alone more and more. The married couples got up to dance. The single people mingled and flirted, and she sat there like an island in the middle of all the celebration. She was considering making her escape when someone sat down in the empty chair beside her. "Not much of a dancer?" he asked. Jessica looked up to see a man about her age with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He wasn't traditionally handsome in the way that usually caught her attention, but there was something about him that made her pause. Maybe it was how he seemed genuinely curious about her answer, not just making conversation to fill the silence. "Not really," she said, expecting him to take the hint and move on. Most people did when they encountered her wall of politeness. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully. "Me neither." I always feel like I'm going to step on someone's feet or knock over. The cake table! He gestured toward the dance floor where couples were swaying to a slow song. I'm Ryan, by the way. I work with Tom at the fire station. Jessica, she replied automatically, then immediately regretted giving her real name instead of just her last name, like she did in professional settings. Ryan didn't seem to notice her hesitation. He was watching the happy couple on the dance floor with a soft expression. They're perfect together, aren't they? Tom talks about Lisa all the time at work, how she makes him laugh, how she's the smartest person he knows, how lucky he feels every single day. Jessica felt that uncomfortable, twist in her chest again. That's nice, she said, her voice coming out flatter than she intended. Ryan turned to look at her then, really look at her. Not the way men usually looked at her, trying to figure out if she was available or wealthy or worth their time. He looked at her like he was trying to understand something deeper. You don't believe in it, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Jessica stiffened. She wasn't used to people reading her so easily. I believe in being practical, she said, falling back. On her professional tone. That's not the same thing. The simple statement hung in the air between them. Jessica felt exposed, like he had seen through all her carefully constructed defenses with just one look. She should have gotten up and walked away right then. That's what she always did when someone got too close to the truth. But something about Ryan made her stay in her seat. Maybe it was the way he wasn't trying to impress her or fix her or convince her of anything. He was just sitting there, patient and calm, like he had all the time in the world to wait for her to decide whether she wanted to keep talking or not. What about you? She heard herself asking. Do you believe in happily ever after? Ryan smiled, and Jessica was surprised to notice that it reached his eyes. I believe in trying, he said. I believe that good things happen when people are brave enough to be real with each other. Jessica didn't know what to say to that. In her world, being real was dangerous. Being real got you hurt, left you vulnerable, made you weak. But sitting there next to this strange, gentle man who talked about bravery like it was something beautiful instead of something foolish, she felt the first tiny crack in the armor she had spent 3 years building. And for just a moment, she wondered what it might feel like to breathe freely again. After the wedding, Jessica tried to forget about Ryan. She told herself it was just one conversation with a stranger, nothing more. But somehow he had gotten her phone number from Lisa, and 3 days later, he sent her a simple text message. Hi, Jessica? It's Ryan from the wedding. Hope you had a good week. There's a new coffee shop downtown that makes amazing blueberry muffins. Want to check it out this Saturday? Jessica stared at the message for 20 minutes. Her first instinct was to ignore it completely. That's what she always did when someone tried to get closer. But something made her hesitate. Maybe it was how he hadn't tried to be smooth or impressive. He was just asking about coffee and muffins like they were already friends. Against her better judgment, she typed back, I don't really do coffee dates. His response came quickly. Good thing it's not a date then. Just 2 people who don't like dancing, eating baked goods, and complaining about how loud weddings are. Despite herself, Jessica almost smiled. Almost. Instead, she put her phone away and tried to focus on work, but the message stayed in her mind all week. When Saturday came, she found herself getting dressed and driving to the coffee shop, telling herself she was just being polite. Ryan was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 large coffee cups and a plate of muffins. He waved her over like they did this every weekend. I ordered for you, he said as she sat down. Regular coffee, no sugar, no cream. You seem like a straight coffee kind of person. He was right, and that bothered her more than it should have. How did you know that? Lucky guess, he said with that same gentle smile. Plus, you have that no-nonsense vibe. People who take their coffee black usually take everything else straight, too. Jessica felt exposed again, the way she had at the wedding. She took a sip of coffee to buy herself time. What's that supposed to mean? Just that you don't seem like someone who likes things complicated or messy. Everything in its place. Everything. Under control. He wasn't wrong, but hearing it out loud made it sound cold and lonely. Jessica changed the subject. What do you do when you're not fighting fires? I volunteer at the animal shelter on weekends, Ryan said, breaking off a piece of muffin. Dogs mostly, but sometimes cats. They're easier to understand than people. Sometimes? How so? They're honest. When a dog is happy, you know it. When they're scared or hurt, they don't try to hide it. They just are what they are. Jessica felt that uncomfortable twist in her chest again. That sounds nice, she said carefully. What about you? What do you do for fun? The question caught her off guard. Fun? She couldn't remember the last time she had done something just because it was enjoyable. I work, she said finally. That's not what I asked. It's what I do. Ryan studied her face for a moment. When's the last time you did something that made you laugh? Jessica opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. Again. She honestly couldn't remember. The realization hit her like a physical blow. When had she become this person? When had she stopped living and started just surviving? I should go, she said, standing up suddenly. Thank you for the coffee. But Ryan didn't give up. Over the next few months, he kept showing up in her life in small, gentle ways. He would text her funny pictures of dogs from the shelter. He brought her lunch when she mentioned working through her break. He invited her to movies, art galleries, farmers markets, always casual, always friendly, never pushing for more than she was willing to give. Jessica found herself looking forward to his messages, even though she tried not to. She started taking longer lunch breaks when he visited. She even caught herself smiling at his terrible jokes, though she tried to hide it behind her coffee cup. But the more time she spent with Ryan, the heavier her armor felt. His kindness made her defenses seem cruel by comparison. His easy laughter made her realize how quiet her world had become. His genuine interest in her thoughts and feelings made her wonder when she had stopped having opinions about anything that wasn't work-related. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in November. Jessica had been working on the biggest case of her career for months, a corporate merger that could make or break her partnership track. She had prepared for weeks, researching every angle, anticipating every argument the other side might make. The hearing lasted all day. Jessica presented her case flawlessly, her voice steady and confident, her arguments sharp as knives. She had never been more prepared for anything in her life. She lost anyway. Not because she wasn't good enough, not because she hadn't worked hard enough, but because the other side had information she didn't know existed. Information that should have been disclosed months ago, but somehow slipped through the cracks. It was a technicality, a stupid mistake that had nothing to do with her abilities, but it didn't matter. Jessica sat in her car in the courthouse parking lot, staring at her hands on the steering wheel. 3 months of work, gone. Her shot at partnership, probably delayed for another year. Her perfect record, broken. She drove home in a daze, went straight to her apartment, and sat on her couch, still wearing her court clothes. She didn't turn on the lights. She didn't eat dinner. She just sat there in the dark, feeling the weight of her life pressing down on her chest. That's when Ryan texted her. How did it go today? I was thinking about you. Something about those simple words broke something inside her. Here was this man who barely knew her, thinking about her day, caring about her success, and she had spent so much energy keeping him at a distance. She had been so busy protecting herself from getting hurt that she had forgotten how good it felt to have someone care. Before she could stop herself, she was calling him. He answered on the second ring. Jessica, are you okay? And that's when she broke down completely. 3 years of held-back tears came pouring out all at once. She told him about losing the case, about how tired she was of fighting all the time, about how lonely she felt even when she was surrounded by people. I can't breathe, she whispered through her tears. I built these walls to protect myself, but now I feel like I'm suffocating behind them. I don't know how to be anything other than this cold, professional person anymore. I don't even know if the real me still exists. She does, Ryan said quietly. I've seen her. In the way you almost smile at my stupid jokes. In how you always ask about the dogs at the shelter. In how hard you try to care about people even when you're scared of getting hurt. I don't know how to take the walls down, Jessica admitted. I built them so carefully, so strong. I'm scared that if I let them fall, I'll fall apart too. Then don't tear them down all at once, Ryan said. Just maybe let me help you find the door. For the first time in 3 years, Jessica felt like maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to carry all this weight alone. Maybe being strong didn't mean being isolated. Maybe the bravest thing she could do was ask for help. Okay, she whispered. I think I'd like that. The morning after Jessica's breakdown, she woke up feeling embarrassed and vulnerable. She had cried on the phone with Ryan for over an hour, telling him things she had never told anyone. In the harsh light of day, she wanted to build her walls, even higher, and pretend the conversation never happened. But when she checked her phone, there was a simple message from Ryan. Good morning. No pressure, but I'm making pancakes if you want to come over. Address is 425 Oak Street, apartment 2B. Jessica stared at the message for a long time. Every instinct told her to decline, to go back to her safe, lonely routine. Instead, she found herself getting dressed and driving to an address she had never been to before. Ryan's apartment was nothing like she expected. It was small and cluttered, but in a cozy way. Books were stacked on every surface, plants sat on windowsills, and dog toys were scattered around the living room. The walls were covered with photos of friends, family, and dogs from the shelter. I borrowed Charlie for the morning, Ryan said, gesturing to a golden retriever who was currently stealing bacon from a plate on the coffee table. Hope you don't mind dogs. Jessica had never been around animals much, but something about Charlie's happy face and wagging tail made her smile. A real smile, not the polite one she used in professional settings. They ate breakfast at Ryan's tiny kitchen table, Charlie sitting hopefully between them. Ryan didn't mention the phone call from the night before, didn't ask how she was feeling, didn't try to fix anything. He just talked about normal things, the weather, a funny story from work, how Charlie had learned to open doors at the shelter. He's an escape artist, Ryan said, scratching behind the dog's ears. Every time we think we've got him contained, he finds a new way out. But he never goes far. He just wants to explore, then come back to where it's safe. Jessica found herself relating to the dog more than she cared to admit. Over the following weeks, Ryan began the slow, patient process of helping Jessica remove her armor. He didn't try to tear down her walls all at once. Instead, he helped her recognize them one by one. You do this thing, he said one day as they walked through the park. When someone asks you a personal question, you straighten your shoulders and your voice gets colder, like you're putting on invisible armor. Jessica felt herself doing exactly that as he spoke. I don't know what you mean. There it is again, Ryan said gently. It's okay. You've needed that protection. But maybe we can figure out when you actually need it and when you're just wearing it out of habit. He was right. And Jessica hated that he was right. She had been wearing her professional mask for so long that she barely knew when she was putting it on anymore. It was like breathing, automatic and constant. Slowly, Ryan helped her notice these moments, when her jaw tensed during casual conversation, when she switched to her lawyer voice during simple disagreements, when she physically stepped back from people who got too close. Why do you do that? He asked one evening when she had retreated to the other side of his couch after he had tried to show her a funny video on his phone. Do what? Create distance the moment someone tries to share something with you. Jessica thought about it for a moment, really thought about it. Because sharing means caring, and caring means you can get hurt. And getting hurt means what? The question hung in the air. Jessica realized she had never actually finished that thought. Getting hurt means what? That you're weak? That you made a mistake? That you're human? I don't know, she admitted finally. That became their pattern. Ryan would gently point out her defensive behaviors, not to criticize, but to help her understand them. And Jessica, slowly and carefully, began to examine the walls she had built. She told him about her marriage, about the day she came home to find her husband packing his bags, how he had said she was too cold, too focused on work, too hard to love. How those words had echoed in her head for 3 years, becoming the foundation of every wall she built. Maybe he wasn't wrong, Jessica said one night as they sat in his living room, Charlie asleep between them. Maybe I am too hard to love. Or maybe, Ryan said quietly, he was scared of how much love you actually had to give. Maybe it was easier for him to call you cold than to admit he wasn't brave enough to handle your warmth. The idea had never occurred to Jessica before. She had spent so long believing that her marriage failed because she wasn't enough, wasn't soft enough, loving enough, feminine enough. But what if it failed because she was too much, too passionate, too intelligent, too strong for someone who needed her to be small? Ryan helped her remember things she had forgotten about herself. How she used to paint watercolor landscapes on weekends. How she had once volunteered to read to children at the library. How she used to make elaborate birthday cakes for her friends, decorating them with tiny sugar flowers that took hours to create. What happened to that person? Ryan asked. She got tired of being disappointed, Jessica said. She got tired of caring so much about everything and everyone. It was easier to stop caring than to keep getting hurt. But you didn't stop caring, Ryan pointed out. You just tried to hide it. You still work twice as hard as anyone else because you care about doing a good job. You still remember everyone's coffee order at work because you care about making their day a little easier. You still check on your mom every Sunday because you care about her being lonely. He was right. Even behind all her walls, Jessica's heart had never stopped caring. She had just gotten very good at pretending it didn't matter. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday evening. Jessica had been having a particularly bad day at work, dealing with a difficult client who had yelled at her for 20 minutes about things that weren't her fault. She came to Ryan's apartment feeling drained and defeated. I hate feeling this way, she said, slumping onto his couch. I hate that people can still get to me, even with all my defenses up. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Ryan said, sitting beside her. Maybe feeling things, even bad things, means you're still alive in there. But it hurts, Jessica said, her voice small and tired. I know, Ryan said. But you know what? You survived the hurt before, and you'll survive it again. The difference is, this time you don't have to do it alone. For the first time since her divorce, Jessica let herself cry in front of another person without immediately apologizing or trying to stop. She cried for the marriage that failed, for the years she had spent in isolation, for the parts of herself she had buried so deep she thought they were gone forever. Ryan didn't try to fix her tears or tell her everything would be okay. He just handed her tissues and sat with her in the sadness, letting her feel what she needed to feel without judgment or impatience. When the tears finally stopped, Jessica felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years. Relief. Not the temporary relief of avoiding pain, but the deep, lasting relief of finally letting it go. The armor is heavy, she said quietly. I know, Ryan replied, but you don't have to carry it all by yourself anymore. Jessica looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something that terrified and amazed her at the same time. She saw someone who had seen her at her worst, most vulnerable moments and hadn't run away. Someone who had watched her build walls and tear them down and build them again and had stayed patient through all of it. someone who had helped her remember that being strong didn't mean being alone. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what? For seeing me, the real me, even when I couldn't see her myself." Ryan smiled, and Jessica realized that somewhere along the way, she had started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worth the wait. 6 months after that tearful phone call, Jessica barely recognized herself. Not because she looked different on the outside, but because she felt different on the inside. The woman who stared back at her from the mirror each morning still wore professional clothes and styled her hair neatly, but her eyes were softer now. There was warmth there that had been missing for 3 years. The changes started small. Jessica began taking actual lunch breaks instead of eating at her desk. She said good morning to her coworkers instead of just nodding curtly. When someone asked how her weekend was, she actually told them instead of giving one-word answers and walking away. Her colleagues noticed. The woman they used to call the Ice Queen was melting, little by little. She laughed at jokes during meetings. She asked about people's families. She even brought homemade cookies to the office one Friday just because she felt like baking again. "You seem different lately," her assistant mentioned one afternoon. "Happier, I guess." Jessica paused, considering the observation. She was happier, she realized. Not the manic, desperate happiness of someone trying to convince themselves everything was fine, but the quiet, steady happiness of someone who was finally comfortable in their own skin. The biggest change was with Ryan. What had started as his patient effort to help her heal had slowly transformed into something neither of them had expected. Jessica found herself looking forward to his text messages, not just as lifelines during difficult days, but as highlights of good ones too. She had started painting again, setting up a small easel in the corner of her apartment. Ryan had encouraged her to try landscapes again like she used to do in college. Her first attempts were rusty and awkward, but Ryan hung them on his refrigerator anyway, right next to photos of shelter dogs and his nephew's finger paintings. "You don't have to keep those," Jessica said one evening, embarrassed by her amateur brushstrokes. "Are you kidding?" "These are beautiful," Ryan replied. "Look at how you captured the light on the water in this one. You have such a good eye for color." Jessica looked at her painting with fresh eyes. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but it was hers. It was something she had created just for the joy of creating, not because anyone expected it of her or because it would advance her career. When was the last time she had done something purely because it made her happy? Ryan noticed things about her that Jessica had forgotten about herself. How she hummed while she cooked, unconsciously swaying to music only she could hear. How she talked to Charlie the dog in a soft baby voice that she never used with humans. How her whole face lit up when she laughed, really laughed, not the polite chuckle she used in professional settings. "You have the most beautiful laugh," he told her one evening as they walked through the park. Charlie was chasing squirrels, his leash tangled around a tree, and Jessica was giggling at his determined but unsuccessful hunting strategy. "I do not," Jessica protested, immediately self-conscious. "You do. It's like sunshine after rain, unexpected and warm, and it makes everything feel cleaner somehow." Jessica felt her cheeks warm. Compliments still made her uncomfortable, but not in the sharp, defensive way they used to. Now they felt like gifts she was slowly learning to accept. She was changing in ways that surprised even her. The woman who used to eat lunch alone now found herself joining conversations in the office break room. The woman who used to decline every social invitation now said yes more often than no, and not to everything. She was still careful about her energy and her boundaries, but to the things that genuinely interested her. When Lisa invited her to a girls' night out, Jessica actually went. When her mom asked if she wanted to come home for her birthday dinner, Jessica said yes and even offered to make the cake. When Ryan suggested they take a weekend trip to visit his sister's family, Jessica felt nervous, but excited instead of terrified. The weekend trip was a revelation. Ryan's sister Amy was warm and welcoming, with 2 young children who immediately adopted Jessica as their new favorite aunt. Jessica found herself on the floor playing board games, braiding the little girl's hair and reading bedtime stories, in funny voices that made the kids dissolve into giggles. "You're a natural with them," Amy said as they watched Jessica help the kids build a fort out of couch cushions. "I don't have much experience with children," Jessica admitted. "Could have fooled me. They adore you already." That night, as Jessica and Ryan walked along the beach near Amy's house, Jessica felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the brittle calm of someone holding everything together through sheer willpower, but the deep, genuine peace of someone who was exactly where they belonged. "Your family is wonderful," she told Ryan. "They like you too. Amy pulled me aside earlier and said she hasn't seen me this happy in years." Jessica stopped walking. "Are you? Happy, I mean?" Ryan turned to face her, his expression serious but warm. "Happier than I've ever been. You?" Jessica thought about the question. 6 months ago, she would have deflected it or given a safe, non-committal answer. Now she considered it honestly. Was she happy? "I think I'm learning how to be," she said finally. "I forgot for a while that it was even an option." "What made you remember?" Jessica looked at him, really looked at him. This man who had seen her at her most broken and hadn't run away, who had patiently helped her rediscover pieces of herself she thought were lost forever, who had shown her that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was courage. "You did," she said simply. "You saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself." "I saw who you really are," Ryan said, reaching for her hand. "Under all that armor, under all those walls, you're the most beautiful person I've ever met. Not because of how you look, though you're gorgeous, but because of how you love, how you care about everything so deeply, even when you try to pretend you don't. How you fight for people, how you remember little details that matter to them. How you give everything you have to the things that are important to you." Jessica felt tears prick her eyes, but for once they weren't tears of sadness or frustration. They were tears of recognition, of finally being seen and understood for who she really was. "I love you," Ryan said, the words floating between them like a prayer. 6 months ago, those words would have sent Jessica running. They would have triggered every defense mechanism she had, every wall she had built to protect herself from exactly this kind of vulnerability. Instead, she felt a warmth spread through her chest like sunlight after a long winter. "I love you too," she said, and meant it completely. They kissed there on the beach, with the waves lapping at their feet and the stars scattered across the sky above them. And for the first time in 3 years, Jessica felt truly beautiful. Not because of her appearance or her achievements or her ability to intimidate opposing counsel in a courtroom. She felt beautiful because she was finally, completely, authentically herself. The armor was gone, the walls were down, and she was still standing. She was still whole. She was still worthy of love. The woman who had once believed she was too hard to love had discovered something incredible. She wasn't hard to love at all. She had just been loving the wrong person and hiding from the right one. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, Jessica realized that the story she had been telling herself for 3 years, that she was broken, that she was too damaged for real love, that she was safer alone, had been wrong all along. The truth was simpler and more beautiful than she had ever imagined. She was exactly as she was supposed to be, scars and all. And someone saw all of her, the messy parts and the polished parts, the scared parts and the brave parts, and loved her not in spite of them, but because of them. For the first time in years, Jessica could breathe freely, and it felt like coming home.